Hey, how's it going everyone? In this video, we will go over Postman variables and look into different types of variable scope that's available in Postman and how we can use them in our collection. So let's get started and talk about what are variables. So variables are like boxes where you can store data and reuse them when needed. So for example, you can store data related to your request like your base URL or your API key, or maybe some test data that you're using for your request like username and password. You can store all of these values in a variable and give it some sort of a name which you can then reuse throughout Postman. Now Postman has different scopes which allows you to block or allow the usage of a particular variable in that particular context. So for example, if you have two collections and you don't want other collection to use your variable, you can give it a collection level scope and add that restriction on it. I know it sounds confusing right now, but trust me, it's really easy to set it up in Postman and we will look into that shortly. For now, let's go over the different variable scope that we have available in Postman. So the first one we have is a global scope or the global variable. So the global variable allow you to access data between collections, requests, different test scripts, or different environment. The global variables are available throughout your particular workspace. Personally, I wouldn't recommend you guys to use global variables unless you want to quickly test something out, as it can cause confusion easily if you work with the same variable names. The next one what we have available is called the collection variable. Now collection variables are available throughout the request in that particular collection, and they are independent of that environment. So it does not change based on a selected environment. Now I know we haven't really talked about the environment yet, but we will get to that once we actually start talking about how environment works. So if you remember in our previous video, we created the Trello collection. So for that one, we used API key and the API token. So we can create a variable for the API key and API token on that collection level. So the next one we can look at is environment variable. So let's say if your API key and API token changes based on each environment, then you should, instead of creating a collection variable, you should create an environment variable. But let's say if you just have one environment, then instead of putting it on environment, you would rather put it on a collection variable. So it just depends on what kind of situation you're working with. If you have something that is changing on per environment level, then you should use the environment variable. If you have something which is consistent throughout every environment, then you should probably use the collection variable. The next one we have is the local variable. Now this one is temporary, so it is only accessible in your particular request. So they are good to use, for example, if you need something quickly for just that particular request, but you don't want it to persist throughout your other request. So for that particular example, you can use a local variable. And local variable, for example, you can use it to override your existing environment variable or collection variable. For that kind of scenarios, local variables are good to use. And the final one we have, which is typically not used as much, is called the data variable. Now data variables are something which is external. You can call your data variables from a CSV or a JSON file, and this is something you can use if you need to. So let's head over to Postman and try to create some variables and see how different scope affects our variable. Alright, so I'm back in Postman, and if you remember from our previous video, we created this Trello collection, and under that we added this to request as part of this board folder. If you haven't checked out that video, please make sure to do that, as we will be creating variables on these requests which we created in our previous video. Okay, so I just opened up this get board ID, and over here we have our key and token which I was talking about. Now to create a variable, it's pretty easy. I can just highlight this, and the moment I do that, you can see it says set as a variable. So if I click on that, I have an option. Either I can find for a particular variable which was created before, or I can set a new variable. So I will do set as a new variable, and I can give a name for my variable here. So I will give this one API key. And then the value is this one, obviously, and then I can decide the scope. So here we have three scope options. You have a global scope, the environment scope, or the collection scope, which is our Trello collection. So for now, I will just give it the global scope. And I know I said not to create a global scope, but I just want to show it to you guys on how it works. So I will do set variable. Now, if you notice, it replaced a value with that API key, with the variable name which we gave it. Now it has this two curly brackets in the beginning and two curly brackets in the end. So now if you want to reuse this, for example, I can delete this. Now just do two curly brackets here and type in API key. There you go. It is automatically suggesting me. I will hit enter and it will add that here. And it is also adding it over here. So this is using it as a variable. Okay, now if I hit send, everything should still work. There you go. We are still getting our 200 response back, and we have all this response here. So it's still working. There's no issues. Now, since this is set as a global variable, what's happening is I can reuse this API key anywhere else. Now, let's say if I create a new request here, and I can just copy this and paste it here. If I just hit enter, do send, I'm still able to get that 200 OK response. So I'm using this API key in a separate request that's not part of my Trello collection right now. and I'm still able to use this. So using global variable, I can use it in a totally separate request that's not part of our collection, or I can even create a new collection and you will still have access to that API key, which is part of other collection. So the disadvantage of that is now you have something which is global. Now if I have, let's say, collection level API key, my collection level will override this global API key. Or if I have some other ones that will override. So that's why you don't want to be using the global variables because it just causes confusion. Rather, you want to keep it as restricted as possible. So I'm just going to remove this and say don't save. So to see my global variable, I can also click on this I button over here. If I click there, I can see all the global variables here. Here I also have option to all the environments that I have, but at the moment I don't have any environments. I'm not seeing anything here. So for my API key, if I just click on this button here, what this will do is allow me to edit this. So I will simply copy this right here and then click on this edit button there. Here I will just get rid of the global variable that I created because I don't want to create it as a global level. Instead, I want to create it as a collection level. So I can remove that by just clicking on the X button there and just to save. And I have right now no more global variables. And I can get rid of this. And now if you notice, this is still in orange. And well, now it converted into red, saying that we don't really have this API key that you're trying to pass in. So that variable doesn't even exist. So for now, I will simply replace this with the value that I provided before. Okay, now what we will do is instead of creating a global level variable, we will create a collection level. So I will copy this, do set as variable, same thing as before. I will change this to API key. And then this time I'm going to do collection variable and then do set as variable. Now we have this collection level created. And if I click on this I button here, you see there is no more global variable there, but instead we have a collection level variable. So if I go to my collections here and take a look at all the variables that I've created, I can do that using collection and click on edit. Here, if I go to variables, you will notice that I have this variable created, which is API key as well as the value. So there you go. So we just created a new variable as part of the collection. Now here's what will happen. If I open up, first of all, let me save this. And if I hit send, this is still working. Everything is still good. But if I just copy the whole thing and paste it here, did you notice this time it's red? It's not showing me as orange. That means it's not able to find that API key. Now, if I hit send, there you go. It says invalid key because this is restricted to the collection level. That's why when we're trying to access it outside the collection, we're not able to get access to that. This is the advantage we want. So now this time anyone can come in, they can use their API key somewhere else. It won't really get affected by the API key that we created for this collection. So that's why you want to keep your API key as restricted as possible. All right, so I will remove this. And I'm also going to put this one as a collection level variable. So I will do set as new. And this time I'm going to do API. Actually, instead of doing this way, we have another option of doing this. I'm going to copy this. I will go to my collection, click on this ellipses, do edit. And in my variables, I can pass this in directly. I'm going to say API token. Then pass the value here. There you go. When I put it in initial value, it automatically puts in the current value. I'm going to do update. And I can just come in here and update that. So I will do API token. There you go. Make sure you're putting in these curly brackets here so that it is part of that. And it knows that this is a variable. Now, if I just do save and hit send, awesome. Everything is still working. Now, I could have also put this as my environment level variable. I could have just done this, but for that, we don't really have an environment at the moment. If you notice, it says no environment. In the next video, we will be creating an environment and we will try to put this in an environment variable and see, well, either this one or we can probably put our base URL in the environment and see how that would work. So we created a global variable. We also created a collection level variable and we talked about the environment variable, which we'll be creating in the next video. For the local variable, we will look into it when we will get down to creating test scripts, as that's where it is most relevant. And for the data variable, as it's not that common, I will add a link in the description below so that you guys can check it out on how that works. So this is how you can use variables in Postman, and it's something you will do quite often. So make sure you understand how this works so that you can create and use variables in the right context. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as that's how I know you guys are enjoying my content. Also, make sure to check out automationbro.com to get access to all my blog posts related to the videos that I put here. And what I would recommend is for you guys to subscribe to my mailing list so that you can get notified of all the latest updates related to my videos and blog posts. And you will find the links in the description below for all of that. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.